Welcome. This is the November 25th Coast Division virtual meetup. We are literally the Saturday after Thanksgiving, so great opportunity. Really have three formal topics today. A little bit about the auction, a little bit about the upcoming train show in Pleasanton, and then in San Jose later in February. And then we'll just jump into Coast Modeling Show and Tell. So let me first just real briefly talk about the auction. We are scheduled for the auction. We're going to try to start at 10:30. We're still a little focused on what the clinic's going to be. It may end up being a demonstration of PowerPoint and modeling that I'll do if we can't find anyone else. You'll see that in an announcement in a Coast Extra probably later this week, exactly what we'll be doing. Item check-in and viewing will be from 10:30 to noon. We'll have an open lunch from 11:30 to noon. I don't think we're going to have a served lunch. Do not have a volunteer for lunch, and I think trying to get pizza is probably going to be too challenging there with where it is. So I think that's going to be kind of open lunch. So either bring something to eat or plan on going out somewhere locally and grabbing a sandwich or something. And the auction will start right after the business meeting. Pretty exciting stuff on the auction. We actually have so far 400 item tags out for early request, which is compared to last time, not quite double, but we're approaching double what we've had in the past. I put in some pictures. We're bringing some items from a kind of an estate sale from the coast of it, or from the California Central Coast ON30 group. So I put in some pictures of those, some HO items, which may be of interest. If you're interested in kits, pretty great array of kits and other things that you'll be able to see. So I think the really good news, I think we're going to have a great auction. And I think if you haven't been to the auction or been back for a couple of years, or maybe even not since right before COVID, this is a great time to come back to come back and check it out, because I think we're going to have a very good auction this time. Any questions on the auction?
Yeah, this is David Baird. What's the procedure for having things sold there? Can you bring stuff on the day and have it
So
checked
you
out?
can bring stuff on the day. What happens when you bring stuff on the day? You ask for tickets, and you'll get some tickets. There's a number of tickets, about 50 early number of tickets that will be available to people to check in on the day who are early. When those are gone, you'll just get a ticket. So you'll be number 401 if that's at that point.
Mhm.
So basically, when you get there, check in with John Cockle. He'll have a table there, and you need to get an auction number from him. He'll assign you an auction number, and you use that both to put on your tickets, and you also use it to bid. And then at the end, financially, everything that you sold or buys gets reconciled, and you either pay or get money back depending on what you've done.
Okay, thanks.
So typically, by the way, minimum is $1 bid. If you put a minimum of $1 on, it starts at $1. It either sells for $1 or more, or it doesn't sell. And so that's kind of the process. And all the items get laid out on tables so everybody can see them beforehand, and then we move through them pretty quickly. And if you want to get cards ahead of time, Craig can provide you cards. You send me an email and go with Craig, and he can send you cards ahead of time. And if you don't have a bidder number, you can contact John, and he can get a bidder number ahead of time too. I think in terms of, he maybe has to get into the computer to do it, but I think he can do that.
Okay, thank you.
Cool. Well, you're more than welcome. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to share again here and talk about the Great Train Show. That's coming up on the 9th and 10th. We have 3 volunteers. I think Larry and Jesse are on here. They both volunteered, so we have 3 so far.
And Phil, it's Frank. I'm volunteering. I just haven't figured out when I can.
And Frank told me he has. It's just we have 4 shifts. There are 2 shifts on each day. So far, 3 of the 4 shifts are covered. I'll be there quite a bit through the time, so it should be good. I just showed you these pictures. This on the left here, this is kind of what was set up, but the sign we'll have up will be the one on the right. So what we're really trying to do is focus on 2 things. We'll have joining the NMRA or the convention. The way it's set up is for the show, we'll be doing the $10 rail pass if people want to join the NMRA. And for the convention, we have a $10 off special for the day of the convention. So, if there's somebody who's already a model railroader who's there, one of the modular guys, says, oh yeah, I'm an NMRA member, then you can sell them on the convention. If they're not an NMRA member, you can sell them over here. And by the way, so I'll probably send something out on this, but the way I typically suggest we do this at the shows is when someone comes up to the booth, and we have a booth, we'll have a presence there. So there's some signage, there's some attraction stuff. Somebody walks up, kind of is looking at the booth. The first question I always ask them is, are you a model railroader? And if they say no, I'm here with the kids and the wife's over there, then you kind of know there's no reason to try to sell them on NMRA membership. If they're not already a model railroader, they're not going to become an NMRA member immediately. They have to become a model railroader in their own mind first. Then the second question they say, yes, I'm a model railroader, is, of course, are you an NMRA member? If they say yes to that, then you start selling them on the convention. If they say no to that, then you say, why not? This is the best. Now, joining the NMRA is the best deal in model railroading. Let me tell you about the great things. Then you can look over at that blue sign. It's a great opportunity to learn the clinics, all the things we get to do. Great inspiration going and seeing layouts. And the video will be running with the details of that there. So after you can point to the video, or you can point on the sign to some of the things like all the great layouts that are in the area that you can see. You can talk about meeting people, building friendships, and modeling. And then finally, savings, the 10% discount program. If you're going to buy something, and today a lot of stuff you buy directly from the manufacturer, get 10 to 25% off on things there. So it's actually a really good program from that perspective. And then what you can do is say, and by the way, you can get all this for a rail pass for only $19.95. It's a great value. I mean, look around the show here. What can you buy for $20 here that's going to give you as much value as being an NMRA member? And then as they kind of look at it and they take the paper and they're ready to walk away, you go, but wait, before you leave, if you do it today, if you fill it out and give me $10 today, the PCR will pay the other $10 of your membership. And so we actually create a value that they have to do today before they leave to get the $10 discount and the great value. So, if you kind of walk them through that, it's really, and Frank will tell you, we've done this at a couple of shows, and you do get people coming back and bringing back their filled out forms, etc. So I don't know if that makes sense, but that's kind of the thought process, and it works pretty reasonably well.
Bill, we got 5 at Rail Fair. I worked Rail Fair, and we got 5.
Yeah, there were 5 that day, and there were a couple the day before. And Rail Fair was a pretty quiet show, exactly. So
hey, Phil, just a quick question. Would you write up the script?
Again, certainly.
Yeah, write up the script and at least send it to the guys that are volunteering, because you've thought it out and you've got the trap door, so to speak.
It's a pander. Yeah, it's guys, by the way, this is nothing different than basic trade show marketing. Just turns out I've done a bit of that in my life. So anyway, yeah, no, I will. I'll write something down, Jesse. And also, that's important. I was going to talk to that actually. For those of you that have volunteered, I'm going to get the tickets on Friday night, is what I understand. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to have the tickets probably at the layout in Pleasant, the Alameda County train layout, because I think you can get to that. The actual admission is at the door to the building. So what you're seeing now on the screen is actually, this is the layout, and it's building A only. It used to be 2 buildings, but because it's building A only, they're going to do security over here at this public entrance. And the train layout of the club in Pleasanton is, if you look up the sheet of paper right here where my arrows go, if you go that way about 300 feet, you're at the layout. The parking will be to the left here. So if you look to the left of this, that's where the parking will be, the paid parking. I'm going to try to find out if there's a way to park. There's another area to park in, and if they're going to let us in there for free for the people from the layout in Pleasanton. If that's the case, I'll send you how to get there and park for free, so you won't have to pay for parking. That parking lot, parking. Hang on, let me grab. I'll put up the fare here in a second. Let me. That's the. So this is the fare. So normally when you come in, you'll come in here and turn, and this is gate 8. So when the train shows there, this is where everybody will be coming in. This will be paid parking, and they'll charge right here. What I'm trying to see is if we can there's a parking lot back here that we may be able to get access to. It's right in this area. And then you walk in, there's an access here. It's kind of a tunnel access. You walk through here and you walk over here. The train club is actually in this building right here. So the train club is here, and this is the building where the train show will be in. So the entrance to the train show will be here. The Alameda Club is right here. So if you end up parking here in this paid parking, what you're going to have to do is when you come in here, you won't have to enter the building and pay to get into the building until you get here. So you'll be able to walk over here, and I'll have your tickets over here at this building and have someone have a ticket for you there. Does that make sense? Anyway, so this is when you come in, we're actually right here. So these are the modular groups here in the back side of the building, and we're actually right here. And so you notice we've actually got quite a reasonable amount of space if we want to, because these are 8-foot tables. So we can put, 2 or 3 8-foot tables as long as we can get the tables there. And for those of you who have not volunteered, you can sign up for a shift. Just use the QR code here. It'll take you to the sign up, or you can use this URL up here. You'll have to enter it. It's basically that lets you go sign up for a shift. What I get then is I get a nice little output of what shifts there are. So that's really it, just that I had. Any other thoughts, questions?
Well, you wanted to talk a little bit about the about the time saver and that sort of stuff. I have to agree with Frank. I think the time saver is a great activity for kids. My experience at trade shows, even the train shows in the past, has somebody is moving, and you've got maybe 10 seconds to have them stop walking.
Yep.
And so that's why I remember Pat LaTorres and I used to do model building at the old show, at past shows. And when somebody walks by and sees somebody making something, and there's doesn't even have to have a sign, but it would be nice, learn things or blah, blah, blah. If they stop for a minute and say, oh, I wonder what he's doing, bang, they have stopped walking. And that's my whole feeling about demonstrations versus time saver.
And I think you're absolutely right. And that's kind of what I'd love to have is if you have 2 people there, if one person's doing a demonstration and the other person is standing out, we got a table, and next to it we've got the sign with all the detailed stuff we saw. You're doing a demo, somebody stops and looks, then the person on the other side of the table can kind of walk up while they're looking and say,
grab them.
Hi. Exactly. Hi, welcome. Or are you a model railroader? I know it sounds corny, but it's really interesting. I don't have this in digital form, but many years ago, there was a video made by John Cleese. And I don't know if you know who John Cleese is. John Cleese was part of the Monty Python comedy troupe, and he actually made most of his money from doing training videos separate from Monty Python. And the training video is very British, and it's a father and son, and the son wants to go do a trade show, and the father says it's silly and stupid. And so he finally agrees to let the son do it. And then he hires John Cleese, who's a consultant, to make sure the son fails. And basically, the whole movie is the father and John Cleese watching the son and his employees set up this trade show booth and all the mistakes they make. And the thing that is very interesting about this is they get to the point where they've set the booth up, they put all the brochures out so nicely that no one will pick them up and mess it up. They're standing at the edge of the booth. It looks like a wall of people that you not go through. And then they have the thing where somebody comes into the booth and they're looking, and the employee comes up, and the consultant looks at the father and he says, "Here it is. This is the moment that ruins it all." And the employee walks up and they say, "Can I help you?" And the person turns around and goes, "No." And the point is, what do you say then? Right. And his whole point was that first question has to be a question they cannot answer in a way that you can't respond. So no matter what they say, you have to be able to say something next. And so it was actually, John, I thought it was an amazing video. When after I watched it, we used to have fairly large groups of employees go to Las Vegas for these things, and we would have them all meet and they'd watch this video to understand, how do you act in those kind of situations. Anyway, I'm sorry. But like Frank says, it seems to work. We've been getting, anywhere from 5, 10, 20 at most of these events. And my hope is we get that many here. And for those of you who aren't going, by the way, it's a great deal because you do get a free ticket into the show and get to have some fun too. It's actually a lot of fun, quite frankly. Be right back in the middle of the modular layouts too. So anybody doing any exciting modeling?
I'm doing, and I don't have it ready for now. I'm finishing up, or I'm in the never completed. I'm building another city scene, and it's on the side. And I'm really having fun, and I'll try to do it for next meeting. Fun with my Xerox machine, making signs for these buildings, and it adds, you do it all the time when you do things. Yes, you can see in the background, I've got a city scene and we got signs on that red building. I'm having so much fun naming things and those types of things. I forgot all about that, just adding time and place. So I'll see if I can have something done for next week.
So something that I thought was really interesting was to take your different parts of your layout and pick something out and write down a few basic facts and then throw it into Chat GPT and have Chat GPT write a history for that part of your layout. It's actually, I saw a guy do it. It's actually pretty interesting. You say, okay, this town was built in 1890. It produced lumber in this, and it's now 1930, and it's in the Depression. And give a Chat GPT some data like that, and have it write a 5-paragraph description of the history of the town and its current state. And then, by the way, you can ask it to write in Hemingway or anybody's format. It's very interesting to do if you haven't ever played with it. Creating your railroad history.
I'm sure Chat GPT would probably have this big advantage because the spelling would be correct.
Oh yeah, it's
I'm going to go out to the Walnut Creek layout this morning, or maybe this afternoon. I used to be a member of that club, and it's been a long time, let's say, since I've actually been out there again. And so I'm going to take a ride. And they're open from 11 to 6, I think, this
Yep.
afternoon.
Yeah, this is
Yeah.
one of their weekends. I have them in my calendar to make sure we don't intrude on that and the auction, because we have so many volunteers from
Yeah.
Walnut Creek. Yeah, I think they're actually in the process of looking at going to DCC now. So I think that's
Oh,
been,
that's interesting. As I haven't followed them. I mean, I used to spend a lot of hours up in the sky there, putting pins into blocks for
yeah.
DC thing. I never thought about the fact that they were or were not DCC.
Yeah, I think they haven't, but I think they're starting to really consider how to do it. So
That's going to be a
it's
pain in the ass, boy. There's a lot of wire.
well, and and the problem we found in Pleasanton was that the wiring on the O side that was done for DC was really not very good for DCC. We had one place where we figured there's about 110 foot of wire from the control system where the DCC was being injected to where the engines were. And we found there were some decoders that, now this is O scale, that when the PWM circuit switched on and off the motor, because the way the motors work in DCC is the motor doesn't run on voltage. It runs on a PWM where it turns 12 volts on and then turns it off and on. And it turned out in this decoder that was about a 40 kilohertz sample rate on the PWM, and you could actually, when you were running the locomotive at 50%, when you got into this block with this really long piece of wire, there was so much noise on the cable from the decoder that the decoder actually lost connectivity with the base. The DCC failed, the data signal failed. And it turned out that there was so much noise that even when it went in other parts of the layout that didn't have as long cables, there was so much noise it could never reacquire the I pattern or the data signal. So we literally had locomotives that would run through this block, and they would become zombie locomotives, would never stop. You could never talk to them again until you tipped them off the tracks enough to break the power. And it was purely just incredibly long cables that were really making the noise very bad. So I imagine you have a lot of the same problems in Walnut Creek, because all the DC signaling runs upstairs to the mezzanine and then runs all down from there to the layout. So it's very long, ends up being very long cables, which for DC is irrelevant, because there really is no.
Years ago, and I don't remember, I wasn't there when the layout was put together, but they had a switch room that they got from, it looked like the telephone company or something.
They
like
use
that.
They use telephone relay switches for all the switching.
Relay switches, that was it.
Yep. No, it's very nice. It's a wonderful design for DC. But like I said, when you try to take some of these things into DCC, so if you look at the Pasadena Club, they had a very similar setup for DC, and they finally made the decision to go to DCC, and they tore it all out. I mean, they basically said, we're not even going to run DC at all. We decided in Pleasanton, we've set it up so we can run DC on the main loops only. So you can run kind of for ultimate show backup, or for a member who wants to take a DC engine and run it around a few times before they put DCC into it. But that's really all we're leaving DC to, because you just really didn't use it for switching and switching areas in that anyway.
What?
DCC is so much more effective.
I also have the camera off.
Oh, thank you. Okay, want me to bring you breakfast?
Could you, please?
So I muted Chuck there. So anyway, and quite frankly, I haven't been doing much modeling, been too many other things going on, lots of home things. We had our microwave decided on the last dish last night for Thanksgiving dinner, there was a very large noise and a flash of light, and the microwave completely went away. So I assumed it blew the tube out, and that was the end of the microwave. So You know, it's the getting a new microwave, and it's a wall mount, so you've got to get a new wall mount kit. What a battle.
That's a pain in the butt.
Nothing is easy. It's why Sharp
We
had to grow the microwave by 1/8 of an inch bigger on height, so the old trim kit won't fit on the new microwave. It's pretty amazing.
we had our kitchen built decades ago. Well, no, a decade ago, and we had a small, very powerful microwave, which has, needless to say, almost immediately been discontinued. But it was a full power, but small. And of course, there was the buzz, and it stopped working. And we found this guy in Oakland who has since closed. And he was like the only guy I'd ever seen one of these things, and had the ability to get the tubes and a couple of other things for it. And I'm scared to death that my microwave will die one of these days because there's no place to put a new one.
Yep. That's true.
Oh,
Oh, yeah.
But yeah, the other thing we will be looking for is kind of taking it a little bit laissez-faire, but at the auction, we're definitely gonna need some volunteers for the auction, for kind of managing things. Jer is not gonna be here. Bob is gonna be managing the back end, but we're gonna need some, folks to help manage and move some stuff. It'd be good to have somebody willing to write down on the cards the bid amount. I'll do the data entry, but we need probably then about 4 or 5 more people to help with moving stuff around and handling items and the reconciliation, etc. So, because I think we are going to have a lot of items. It'll be a good auction, I think. I think that, the problem with the last 2 auctions, I think we were still kind of at the point where people were somewhat uncomfortable still, etc. So I think we're seeing a lot more comfort level. And now the train shows have kind of started again for some of the folks that do train shows. They should be looking for more inventory, etc.
that was one of the things that upset me, and I think it was the last auction or the auction before. I really had my heart set on a couple of things, and there was a couple of guys there that said, "No, I want all of this stuff, and I want all of that stuff," and I just didn't want to go to that kind of price.
Yeah,
But we got to sell it.
well, that's the problem. Is it's kind of, we all want to get that great bargain. It's and then you regret I was looking at locomotives, and I was looking at the 440 ON30s they were selling at Train World for, I think, $59.99 with a DCC decoder, a basic decoder in them. And I think I only bought 3, and I was thinking, yeah, I wish I bought a couple more of those at that price. Kind of like folks in HON3 and the Blackstone locomotives. They stopped making, what happened was Soundtracks, their manufacturer in China, basically wrapped up their contracts, and when it came time to rebid, was not interested in bidding for a reasonable price. So, I mean, what's happened is the Blackstone models, I don't know if you watched them on eBay, but they've doubled in price from their, basically the used ones on eBay are twice the list price of them when they sold. So scarcity is making some things expensive. And actually what's interesting is for some parts of our hobbies like ON3 and HON3, it doesn't appear the mainstream manufacturers are really going to address the markets anymore. It's going to become more addressed by smaller manufacturers and more build it yourself, I guess.
Well, I think I'm going to go get my day started.
Yep.
And I wish everybody a happy Thanksgiving and happy cleaning out of their refrigerators. Take care.
Yep. Happy Thanksgiving, Jesse.
Yeah, happy
Yeah.
Thanksgiving.
Yep.
Yeah.
Happy Thanksgiving.
Yeah, happy Thanksgiving. I guess not much else. So for those of you who did volunteer for next week, I will be sending some emails out. And if you're out here and want to come by on Friday and pick up a ticket, that's fine. If not, I'll put something in there. I'll put my number in there to make sure that we can meet up on Saturday morning or whenever you come over. I'll be there both days. I mean, I'll pretty much be there the whole time, so it shouldn't be an issue. Cool. Well, unless folks have stuff to share, I'm just going to kind of call it because I personally don't have any modeling things to share. I was trying to think about it. All I've been doing primarily trying to do some lettering and getting some lettering together for trying to do a dry transfer lettering, but I don't think that's of much interest.
Mm.
So
Now it's like me, I'm trying to build a test bed table so I could put a circle of track and a couple of straight strips of track in there for programming and speed matching. Except the other day when I tried to unfold one of the legs, it came off the table, so I need to put bolts instead of screws.
yeah. Yeah, I was actually gonna bring down. I went to the train shop up to Just Trains yesterday. I had to go up to Pleasant Hill to pick up the new microwave, and so I said, "Well, I'm in Pleasant Hill. I'll run up to up to Just Trains." And by the way, changes there. Jim is selling the store, so there's going to be kind of a change in management. I think it's going to hopefully be good for the store and having a hobby shop there.
Yeah. Yeah, Wes is buying
Wes
it.
Wes is buying it exactly, and I think I think he and I talked a little bit, so I'm hopeful he's can get it figured out in terms of how to run it and make it work. I think it's a challenging business, and we all can support them. One of the things I really encourage folks to do is if you want to buy something online, look and see if it's on Walters, because if it's on Walters, then they can get it, they can order it, get it shipped within a week or two. You get it for the Walters price, but what you don't have to do is pay any shipping. And so, it becomes a nice way to order. You don't have to go there. You just call them on the phone and say, hey, I was ordering 3 paints from True Color, and I just basically said I need these 3 paint numbers. They ordered the 3 paints, and a week or two later, I got a call saying, hey, the paints are here. And then you pick them up, let you get a chance to go to the store and see if there's anything else you need. But I saved I don't know, it was $8 shipping. So, and they charge you tax anyway. So, it's not like you save tax now if you buy stuff mail order, because all the big places charge you tax. So, I think that's a good way to support your local hobby store.
Well, today is Small Business Saturday, so it'll be a good day to go in there.
Yep, good day to go through. Yeah, if you go up to see the San Ramon layout or go to Walnut Creek, I think San Ramon layout's open today also. They're in Concord there, and then the Walnut Creek Club's there, and you can go to Just Trains. You can make a trifecta of visiting today. So,
And just a small plug, Golden State Model Railroad Museum, we're having our annual train shows December 23 and 24 and December 30 and 31.
wow, on Christmas Eve?
Yeah.
New Year's Eve? Wow.
Oh yeah, we're gluttons for punishment.
That's good. Yeah, we don't have really much O scale, but the O scale group, Joe Barton had a kind of hosted a O scale central driven O scale event last Saturday at the club up there in the Golden State Rail. I think there were about 12 or 14 people there. I heard. Unfortunately, the CCC had a work session. I had to do wiring. We finally broke down and decided we had to rewire all of our reverse loops as separate runs back to a booster. It turns out daisy chaining circuit breakers with auto reversers just doesn't work very well. The circuit breakers end up popping all the time when the auto reversers flip because of, changing the current underneath the train, or changing the polarity under the train. So we had to do a bunch of rewiring, and I couldn't go down to it. So I missed you guys down there. By the way, is the O scale site, is part of the O scale layout in the Golden State, is it DCC or is it all DC?
You
On
know, I don't know. I mean, I know N scale and HO, but I don't know about the O scale one.
Yeah, so somebody said at one point it was all DC, and then some of the guys that came back said no, there was a DC loop and a DCC loop, or some part that was DCC. So I was just curious.
Okay, well, I'll ask our train master next time
Yeah.
I talk to him.
I mean, because what's interesting is there really are only a couple of O scale clubs. There's the Golden State one, the Pleasanton one. That's really about it. And what's interesting about O scale is probably much more of a club scale today than it is a home scale. Just because for most homes, it's just unless you've got a barn, it's far too small or too large for home. Or there are people who argue that with me and say you can build a great layout in a 1-car garage, but when you put 7-foot turns on it, or 6-foot turns, it's hard to do much in a garage other than just a loop.
Yeah.
So,
well, I know that children, whenever they come into the museum, if there's a train running on the HO side and there's a train running on the O scale side, they'll all turn around and look at the O scale side. Always.
Yeah, bigger is better, I think, from the kids' perspective. That's true.
It doesn't matter if you're running a real long train on the HO side. That doesn't impress them as much as a short train on the O scale side does.
Oh, well. So anyway, well, I guess I will just let everyone go. Unless there's anybody has a great topic to talk about. One thing I am trying to get is a bit of additional focus in some of these on dead rail. I thought that might be interesting to have some discussion about dead rail. It seems to me we're getting closer and closer to what I think of as nirvana for dead rail, which is, if you had an engine that could charge off of the tracks when it was on tracks that were powered, but could run for, X amount of time, 5 minutes, 10 minutes, without any power or more, or half an hour or so. What you now have, and it could be controlled wirelessly, not through the rails. So whether you use Wi-Fi or Bluetooth to talk to it, you can talk to it with standard wireless signaling. It's got all the DC, DCC, normal decoder level functions for sound and engine control. If you build a layout, you can just ignore the turnouts. You lay the turnouts, but you block them at the end of the turnouts electrically, and all the track between the turnouts, you just put 12 volts on it. DC, put 12 volts on all your yard tracks. Now your engines just run around. You're controlling them wirelessly. Whenever they're on something other than a turnout, they're charging. And they have plenty of power to run over the turnout. So you have really a very easy, simple wiring scheme. Because I'll argue that 90% of the challenge in wiring a layout is the turnouts. Just wiring straight chunks of track with a couple of feeder wires, and where you don't even really worry if it's just having enough power there to get things charged as they move around. It seems to me you could do that on a layout probably in a day. And there's no switching, there's no control or anything. Everything is wireless, and all the turnouts are just literally manual. They're really just for the direction. There's no electrical operation on the turnouts at all. It seems to me that we're getting really close. If I put that as kind of the ideal way, in 5 years to build a layout, it seems to me an HO, an ON3, and even an O, we're getting pretty close to being able to do that now. We saw that with the Loco-Fi stuff. Obviously the Bluetooth stuff from Tsunami or from Soundtracks, and some of the other things that are coming. So I was thinking maybe it'd be fun to have a few, people come in and talk about that. Have somebody come in and talk about the soundtracks. Maybe have George come in and talk about the Soundtracks version, And then some of the guys that have done some of these dead rail conversions come in and talk a little bit, because it seems to me, if you're building a layout now, because I was thinking about if I built a layout, is it time to say just write off trying to do any control through the rails, just use the rails for charging for electrical power to charge a battery that really supports the locomotives. And then all the locomotives just become independent and you control them from your phone and you keep all the programming on your phone for all your locomotives. If you're doing a layout with 10 locomotives or 15 locomotives, pretty reasonable way to do it.
Phil, is there a technology that would improve the operational, I guess, time for a keep alive?
Well, so the a keep alive is basically an energy storage unit, just like a battery. So it's really the question of how much energy can you store. So, the keep alives, what the keep alives were done was, if you build a capacitor, what a capacitor is a way of storing energy as a magnetic charge. So what a capacitor really is two thin plates. If you think about taking a 2 foot by 2 foot metal plate, take two of them, put a dielectric, i.e., something that's insulates between them, and you lay those plates. And the closer the plates are together, when you put a charge on them, the electrons can't move between the plates, but they all cluster on the plates and they create a lot of energy. And that magnetic charge of that energy is what actually gives you the energy in a capacitor. So what it turned out was, when they started building electronics, they figured they only needed like 1.5 volts or 3.5 volts of power. So what they started doing is they started building capacitors, really, really thin dielectrics that are only good for 4 or 5 volts. Because the closer, remember that old magnetic field thing, it's the square of the distance. The thinner you make the dielectric, the closer the plates are, the more energy it can hold. So what they were able to do with these 3.5 volt capacitors is have 10 times as much energy in the same little thing as in a capacitor that was rated for 30 volts. So what they did, the keep alive thing, I don't know who originally thought it up, but it's brilliant. They said, well, if you take 5 of those 3.5 volt capacitors, and you put them in series, that's 15 volts. And so I can use that to power a 12-volt power supply. So what you do is you power those up. So the energy those can hold is, let's say, X amount of energy. To get more energy, you'd have to have bigger capacitors. So you make the keep alive bigger, if you double the capacitor size, you can double the keep alive. And then a battery basically is the same concept, except batteries store a lot more energy. Maybe not unit size, but can store more energy. So that's really, they're kind of both the same things. The keep alive, what's interesting is an HO, because I know this is true on ON30, with the soundtracks keep alive. If I turn the layout off, the sound will continue to run on a locomotive for a good minute and a half, if not a couple of minutes. And if you basically turn the layout off while the locomotive is running, it'll run for a foot or two before it stops. So that's kind of the amount of energy those ones are holding. With they're the little capacitors. The whole thing's about this big. It's about an inch and a quarter long, quarter, maybe 3/8 of an inch wide, and 1/4 of an inch high. So that holds enough to power an HO locomotive probably for about a foot to a foot and a half.
I'm thinking if you took a tender, steam locomotive tender, and filled it up with a giant keep alive, well,
Yep.
I wonder how that would work.
Oh, you absolutely could. You can parallel the keep alives and have more capacity that way. You'd probably have to be careful about how you manage the voltage between them, but yeah, no, you absolutely could. But if you have a tender, the other thing to do is just put a battery in it. And so the battery, you have to have there's a little battery keeper circuit. They're little tiny circuits. You put that in, because the keep alive, you have to have, for a keep alive, you kind of have to have 3 components. You've got to have a diode that determines that the power can only come out of comes out one way out of the keep alive. And then you've got a Zener diode that locks the voltage, or something to lock the voltage of the keep alive so it doesn't vary. And then you have to have a resistor on the charge current so that it doesn't you don't, when you plug it in, if you plug it in, the capacitors are just there plugged right onto the power supply, they'll suck so much current that you may pop your circuit breakers. So what you do is you put a resistor in to slow the inflow current to the capacitors when they aren't charged up, when you first turn the layout on or first put the locomotive on the tracks. So if you look at those components versus the components to manage charging a battery, probably about the same size. So, you know, then you say, is a battery better than a bunch of capacitors? And there's kind of a trade-off point in how much energy you have, where it makes more sense, I think, to have a battery. But that's kind of the thing that I'd love to have somebody come talk about who really knows about it a lot more than I do. So, but yeah, it's just an interesting thought process to say, if you were building a layout, you know, what are the things that make it challenging to build and operate a layout? And the problem when you go full dead rail is, if the engines aren't charging on the layout, now you've got to have a way to charge them. So you've got to have a way to, you know, either have a plug on them somewhere you can plug in, or a switch so you can plug it in, or, you know, you remove the tender, the top of the tender, and take the battery out, or whatever. It's the same problem. But if you treat it just like a keep alive where it charges from the tracks, then all you got to do is have a percentage of the tracks that have enough power to charge stuff as it's sitting there. So anyway. So at some point, people are going to build layouts very differently than we do today, I think. I think the wireless stuff's going to eventually change our thought process. I mean, the thing that was kind of, for me, a real eye-opener was, you know, the Android, the Locofy saying, you know, it's only Android. You know, I went on Amazon, and you can buy a Samsung Android phone for $49.99 without any minutes. It's on Verizon, but it has no minutes. So you stop and think about it. That's a brand new cab controller for $49.99. It's pretty.
I've been using a product. It's an electrically conductive grease, and
Yep.
I put a little bit on the rails and let the trains track it all over the layout.
Yep.
And you could look at some of the rail on my layout, and it looks dirty. But yet it's perfectly conducting electricity. This
Yep.
stuff is amazing. It has really cut down the amount of time I spend cleaning track, and it works really well through switches and frogs and stuff like that.
Yep. That's NOx, right? The NOx grease.
Yes, that's no.
Yeah. So it's interesting, you know, the guy who runs MRH, I can't remember his name. I'm not pull his name right now. He has done a clinic at some of the conventions on rail cleaning. One of the things that they really advocate is don't use alcohol, because the isotropic properties of alcohol tend to introduce micro arcing, and they say use mineral spirits instead to clean your tracks. And then when you get done cleaning your tracks, we've done that at the Pleasanton Club, and the NOx seems to really help. We actually have one of the those brass cleaning cars, the CSX cleaning car, I think it's CSX. And we put just a touch of the grease on that, and then ran that around with the dry pad and just spread it, and it does seem to help a lot. Another good topic potentially to have is a track cleaning topic. So.
Gotta run, everybody.
I think I'm going to call it, guys. Have a great week. I have this video and the other video, and I will get both of them up over the weekend here. So.
Yes.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
All right. Take care, everybody.
Thanks, everyone. Have a great week. Happy belated Thanksgiving and happy holiday season.
And enjoy your Christmas shopping.
Bye, guys.
Bye, everyone.
Yeah. Happy holidays.